Hello, music fans. You're watching Death by Unicorn, where we talk about metal, rock, and prog music. And this is New Music's Alive in 2025. I'm going to talk about 8 new releases that came out on May 2nd, 2025. And I'll talk about them in my order of preference, starting with Gentle Giant and their live album, Playing the Fool. I don't usually talk about live albums on here, but this one is too great to pass up the opportunity to talk about. Gentle Giant's an amazing progressive rock band from the UK that was active during the 70s and hasn't been active in over 40 years. This is their 1977 live album. So I know I usually talk about new music. This is actually an old recording, but it's newly remastered. And this live album is redone now to feature the whole concert. So the one that was originally released back in the 70s cut certain songs to make it shorter. This new one's an hour and 43 minutes. I don't remember exactly how long the original was, but they added parts of the concert that they cut out. Gentle Giant is one of the most talented and underrated bands from the 1970s. They're probably my fourth favorite band from the 70s, only after Rush, Yes, and King Crimson. They should have been one of the biggest and most influential prog bands, but they're pretty out there. They bring in lots of classical, Baroque, medieval, Renaissance, and folk music into their prog rock. They play live extremely well. Their vocal arrangements and harmonies are always a joy to listen to, and some of their grooves are just so groovy and even danceable while still being really progressive with atypical song structures, time signature changes. Gentle Giant's one of the best, if not this album, I'd say, is one of the best, if not the best live albums I've ever heard. So if you like hearing live progressive music from the 70s, check out this new remaster of Playing the Fool by Gentle Giant. Now we'll go back to talking about studio releases. That one I'm putting in my near masterpiece tier. I'm probably not going to include Gentle Giant's Playing the Fool on any year-end list because it's a live album and it's not really from this year. But if it were, I would put it in my near masterpiece tier and it would probably place fairly highly on my year-end list. Now let's jump into things that qualify. Starting with a genre I don't talk about as much, but I do enjoy some of the artists in it, is a punk rock album by the band Propagandhi, and their album's called At Peace. This is the 8th album by this Canadian band, and it's punk rock, melodic hardcore, skate punk, and heavy metal influences in there. Not so much skate punk, but like their early stuff might have had a little bit of that. And this one I'm putting in my excellent tier. If you're a fan of bands like Choke, Rise Against, and Protest the Hero, I think you'll like this. I know Protest the Hero is more on the prog metal side and Rise Against and Choke are more on the punk side. But Propagandhi has a little bit of that metal influence and even some progressive spirit and technical edge to them. It's very interesting, technical, energetic punk music. It could appeal to progressive rock and metal fans because it's got metal influences, it's technicality, interesting compositions. I'm a fan of the 4 albums that came out before this one from Propagandhi, and this continues that excellent run. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying it's their best album. My favorite currently is Failed States from 2012, followed closely by Supporting Cast and Potemkin's The Limits, but this is still excellent. I'm not as much a fan of their first 3 albums that they did before that run, as those have a more raw punk, low budget production sound to them, as opposed to now they've got a more polished technical punk sound that they do now. It sounds great. My favorite tracks at the moment are Cat Guy, Prismatic Spray, The Tinder Date, and Fire Season. And I enjoy that their lyrics can also be kind of funny, tongue-in-cheek, while still being serious and touching on important issues and interesting philosophical thoughts. That sounds good to you. Check out At Peace by Propagandhi. Next up, I have an EP by a band called Paradigm Blue, and it's called Frontiers. This is an American progressive rock band. I'm also putting this in my excellent tier. Paradigm Blue is a very underrated band. They deserve many more fans. they need more listeners on Spotify for sure. They're kind of one of the lesser known bands that I talk about. But if you're a fan of Rush, definitely check this out. They sound like Rush if Tobias Forge from Ghost was the lead singer. They're calling this an EP, but it's over 37 minutes long, so it easily could be considered a full-length album if it was made back in the 70s time. But since modern prog albums are usually over 60 minutes long, this is kind of an EP at this point. But this is very likely to make my year-end list of top 10 EPs of the year. I think it's great and one that any Rush fan or even just any progressive rock fan should check out. That's Frontiers by Paradigm Blue. Next up, I'm going to talk about punk again in the same video, which is very odd for me to talk about two punk releases in the same video, but this is the band PUP and their album Who Will Look After the Dogs. This is the 5th album by this Canadian band, and punk rock with power pop, post-hardcore, and indie rock influences, also putting this in my excellent tier. And just having this come out the same day as Propagandhi, I guess May 2nd is the day for Canadian punk music. Great Canadian punk music releases. Like Propagandhi, PUP is a bit more technical, innovative, and progressive than your most typical punk bands, though not quite as far as Propagandhi is. Unlike Propagandhi, they take more of a pop-punk approach rather than a melodic hardcore approach, though you can still hear a bit of hardcore influence in PUP as well. They're more for fans of Sum 41, Blink-182, Green Day, and Gob, those types of bands. But they also have this indie rock and emo influence. And their lyrics are also kind of funny, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but they focus more on personal topics rather than philosophy and world issues. But I'd say PUP is one of the best punk bands going today. If that sounds good to you, check out Who Will Look After the Dogs by PUP. Last one that I'm going to put in my excellent tier for this video is an album by a band called Yuka Chronoship. It's called Ribbon Butterfly. This is the 5th album by this Japanese band. It's symphonic progressive rock. And this band has great female vocals, all clean vocals here, great keyboards. Some parts are folky, some parts are medieval sounding, some parts are ambient, atmospheric, and some parts electronic. Some parts drenched in effects, some parts showcase flashy technical playing, all really cool stuff, a really cool sound for fans of Yes, Genesis, and Renaissance, because it does have some of that classic 70s prog vibes to it, but also has kind of modern, artsy, electronic effects, things like that. My favorite track currently is called Mummy and Daddy. Check that out. That's Ribbon Butterfly by Yuka Chronoship. Now we're going to move to my very good tier, and the first one that I want to mention here is by Lights, and it's called A6, the 6th album by this Canadian artist. This is electronic synth pop with alternative and indie rock influences. I don't usually talk about much synth pop, but I enjoy everything that Lights has put out. All her full-length albums, she is great. I particularly love her first 4, which I think are excellent. Some of my favorites, if not my favorite pop albums. Her last one, Pep, was also a very good album, but I feel like it was a bit of a step down from the first 4 in that it sounded less like she had her own signature style. It sounded more like a typical pop album. Her main signature style has more of a DIY sad girl kind of pop music where she's inspired by emo music and focuses on simple keyboard parts, occasional guitar parts, just making sure every melody and hook and chorus were amazingly catchy, not being afraid to take some risks here and there. On this album, the choruses on Damage, Surface Tension, and White Paper Palm Trees are all so catchy. The track Alive Again had potential for me from the verses, but I didn't really like that chorus style of vocal melody, which is essentially a lack of melody, more of like a cheerleader chant. Most of the tracks on this album, though, are bangers. I think it's a slight step up from the last album, Pep, but not quite back up to the level of her first 4 albums. So I'm still going to put this in my very good tier rather than excellent. Next up is the Flower Kings with their album Love, the 17th album by this Swedish progressive rock band. Also putting this in my very good tier. Solid, emotional prog rock songs that aren't as progressive as some of their earlier work. They lean more into ballads and singer-songwriter songs, but there's still some great progressive flair every now and then on here. Amazing performances from everyone involved. Not my favorite album by the Flower Kings, but still a very good and solid release. And last one that I want to talk about in this video is by the band Great Wide Nothing, and it's called A Shout Into the Void. This is the 4th album by this American band. It's neo-prog rock with alternative and punk influences. Also putting this in my very good tier. All of these albums that I'm talking about today are just really stellar. It was a great day for music. So even though this one I'm talking about last, I still do really enjoy it. I thought the 3rd album by Great Wide Nothing, Hymns for Hungry Spirits Volume 2, was also very good, and I was hoping that they'd take it up to the next level with this one, because I think they're a very capable and interesting band. This is of similar quality to their last one, still very good, but it didn't quite blow me away to make me consider adding it to my year-end list. If you want to hear some great keyboard playing, though, definitely check this out. It's kind of like keyboard-driven prog music, but with more of a raw vocal style that you might hear more from like punk and alternative bands. So pretty cool energy from this band. If that sounds good to you, check out A Shout Into the Void by Great Wide Nothing. That's it for my thoughts on these 8 albums that came out on May 2nd, 2025. What do you think of these albums? Let me know down in the comments. And did anything else come out recently that you think I might enjoy? Also let me know. And stay tuned for next time. If you like metal, rock, and prog music, you've come to the right place. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the loop on when I post new videos. In about a week's time, I'll post my thoughts on new albums that are coming out on May 9th. Haken is putting out a live album, Live Forms an Evening with Haken. And we've got new releases from Sleep Token, Lars Frederick Froisley, Novelists, Behemoth, Eden Song, Pimlico, and Black Map. So I look forward to listening to all those and giving my first impressions on them. Stay tuned for that. Peace out.